People of Reddit, what was your final screw you to a boss you didn't like? Story 1. I was a program director developing and piloting some new software, and after a year of being overloaded and telling our executive director that I either needed a second person or a smaller caseload, he pulled me into his office and goes, "We don't really think you're a good fit for this position, but you're a bright young lady and we'd hate to lose you. I'm giving you the option to stay and be my secretary. You have until 7 a.m. tomorrow to decide." So that day I took an early lunch, walked to my other job, asked if I could take on more hours, walked back, and told my boss that I had found other employment and would have my stuff cleaned out by noon. He asked if I could stay 2 more weeks to train a new person, and I told him, no. "What if we paid you a consultation fee?" "No." "But you're the only person in the county that's certified for this job." Should have thought of that earlier. Also, this was in the middle of an audit, where it was discovered that he owed me about $3,000 from unpaid hours. I like to call it my leaving bonus. Story 2. I quit, they begged, so I agreed to stay while they hired someone for me to train up. I figured it might be a month or 2. The local talent pool was not a deep one. Months passed. No interviewees. And I asked coworkers if they'd seen people being interviewed for my spot. Turns out no one was being interviewed for it. At all. I don't know what possessed management to disregard the gift that I'd offered them in staying behind to train someone new. But long story short, I quit that Friday with no further warning. Sent the email at the end of the day, and I guaranteed that ruined several people's weekends. Probably right up to the CIO, since he was the one who convinced me to stay on. Scroll forward a year, and they had hired 3 people to try and keep up with the workload I was managing. They were still falling behind with lower quality work as the output. Various departments were pissed at management, and the coworkers I knew from the place had been told by management to ask me if I'd come back if they ran into me around town. A few folks did run into me, obviously, which is how I found all that out, and they didn't ask me to come back. Instead, we had a good laugh about it. Story 3. Applied for a full-time job at a daycare. Interview was on a Friday, and the director said that she would text me over the weekend to tell my hours for the next week. Meaning, I got the job. Monday rolls around, and no text or email from her. So I'm sitting in my PJs at home thinking I'm actually not getting the job and that I'm now out of work because I hadn't been interviewing since I thought I got it. At 10 a.m., a random number calls me and she asks me to come in for 11. I let it slide, thinking that she lost track of time or whatever. That's fine. By the end of the day, I asked for my schedule and she said she'd contact me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Next day, same thing, except this time she calls at 11, asking me to come in for 11:15. I waited 2 hours for her call. Now I have no car and live 15 minutes away. On top of this, the shifts were only about 4-ish hours long, so it wasn't even full-time work. I tell her that I need a schedule by the end of the day, and I still didn't get one. Next day, she calls at a random time, but too late. I'm busy at an interview with a different job. I tell her I'll stop in and get my check by the end of the week because she can't respect my time and lied on the ad about it being full-time work. Also, that I'm not getting paid to be on call. Yeah, that's some pretty stellar entitlement from that boss. I sure as hell wouldn't want her managing the daycare that my kid went to. Whew. Story 4. Mechanic at a commuter airline. Boss wanted me to sign off on a pre-flight inspection. I refused to sign because the plane was not airworthy. He told me that if I wished to continue working here, that I'd better sign. My response? Then I guess I don't work here anymore. I picked up my toolbox and left. Story 5. I got a new position in a department and had agreed with the lead that I'd do it for a year and then she'd move me to a better position. Instead, she soon got moved to another site, and I found out that her replacement actually sabotaged me from getting another internal position because he didn't want to lose the 3rd shift coverage. The double whammy was that it was when the economy crashed around '08, so while I would have just bailed on the company at that point, positions both in and outside the firm had dried up, so I got stuck there for a few years. Eventually, my boss moved to another position and his replacement was far more cool. In a one-to-one meeting with me when he found out that I was being recruited for other internal positions, he said, "Will it cause me short-term pain if I find someone to fill that role? Yes. But in the long run, it's better for us if we all retain you and all the knowledge that you've gained with the company." So, I got moved up. Story 6. I told one of my bosses that the reason I was leaving was because he mocked my desire to advance in front of my coworkers. His response to that was, "Well, I'm sorry if I did that." Fuck you, dude. I've refused recruiters from there several times because I refuse to work on any team associated with that jackass. Story 7. So I forgot my name tag at my second or third day of work at the supermarket, and the manager, we'll call him Dingus, asks me where my name tag was, and I was honest. I said, I forgot it. To which he says to me, "How about I forget to pay you?" I want to tell him off, but I needed the job. I had a few run-ins with the guy over a couple months. He was one of those short guys that had a complex about it, drove a powerful car, belittled people, and was just generally an overall piece of shit. Eventually, I found full-time work elsewhere, so one day I walked in and resigned on the spot and walked out. This was the weekend right before Christmas. For some reason, that night, I get a call from the store asking me to come in to cover a shift the next morning. I mentioned that I'd quit. They had no one else to do it and said, "Why not one last shift?" I said, "No," and hung up. About 5 minutes later, I got a call from Dingus asking me to do the coverage. I repeated to him that I had quit, and he repeated that he needed the coverage, and he'd see me in the morning. I said, "Fuck you," and hung up. He called me back and said, "You can't say that to me. HR will be having a word with you." So I said, "Okay. Fuck off, short ass," and blocked his number. Thankfully, the new job worked out, and I never needed to use Dingus as a reference. HR will be having a... Fuck you, dude. HR. What are they gonna do? What are they gonna do to someone who's literally just quit? They don't work there. HR doesn't have jack shit on them. What a numbnut. Story 8. My boss and I butted heads a few times after she took over the office. After finding a much better job, I handed her a list of my job responsibilities when she asked me to do so, because she didn't understand what I did there. As soon as I gave her the list, she looks at it, eyes open wide, and she goes, "This is too much. We'd have to distribute all this to like 4 different people." And I said, "Yeah," and walked out. Spoiler, she didn't do any of that, and was fired less than a year later as the office was falling apart due to her negligent management. Story 9. Not me, but my brother. So he tells his boss, "I need to take next Monday off." Boss says, "No, you need to come in." Boss doesn't know that my brother is very valuable in the industry and has had other job offers. So my brother says, "No, you don't understand. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, I'm not coming in next Monday." To which the boss responds, "No, you don't understand. I'm telling you, you are coming in next Monday. Your job is on the line." Like I said, I'm not coming in Monday. I feel like a lot of bosses don't know how to do their due diligence on their employees, especially the ones that are important, ones that have lots of tasks, ones that have certain certifications. It's been kind of a running theme of just, the employee, we don't care about them, they're expendable, until the boss realizes that, they're not expendable. Huh. Well, too late now, asshole. Story 10. I'm a commercial construction superintendent. I couldn't get the support needed from our PMs and had been thrown under the bus for several deficiencies that I had pointed out early in the project, all of which were ignored. My 30 years of experience meant nothing against their 3 to 5 years in the industry. I was tasked with developing a safety program that was never enforced or followed. Because of this, 3 sites were nailed by OSHA, and I got the blame for that as well. One evening, on a whim, I restored my laptop, tablet, and phone to factory settings. The next morning, I removed all of my belongings from the site trailer, locked it up, sent them a goodbye and fuck you very much message, and tossed the keys into a retention pond. I got a call 4 hours later from the company I now work for, and 8 days later I had moved to a new state for twice the salary and half the stress. Story 11. She was a psychopathic narcissist. I knew she was plotting to leave her husband because I found it on a numbered to-do list on top of her desk. I was floored that she would leave it where her husband could see it. It was a home office in one large room. So I took a photo. She proceeded to harass and gaslight her husband, who took off one night and slept in a parking lot. When he returned the next day, she said, "You left me, so it's over." After she royally screwed me over for the umpteenth time, I quit. A few weeks later, I sent the photo to her husband, copied her, and wrote, "For your records," in the subject line. Then, I reported her to the IRS. Story 12. I worked at a stupid fake French cafe, and the manager was an idiot who made a point of giving me the shittiest jobs, just to show that he was in charge. One day, he pulls me off the floor, where I earned tips as a server, and made me polish silver for hours. He kept returning and throwing every second piece back at me, telling me to do it over. He kept saying, "Missed the spot." So I walked out, and kept the apron. I kept the beautiful black apron with the embroidered logo and still wear it when I cook today. Also, I invoiced the manager for my outstanding pay and informed him that his manager was not up to the job. The owner begged me to reconsider, but I told him no. God, the ego is strong with this one. These freaking bosses, man. It's just ego, 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 ego. You are paid probably a little bit more than the guy you're bossing around. I know for me, coming out of business school, if I'd had a management degree, I'd be looking at maybe $50,000 a year, if that, which comes out to $36,600 American. So, not an exorbitant amount. I'm not making a six-figure big boss salary. But some of these people just go on a psychosis-inducing trip on the power, and it is fucking appalling. Story 13. Well, mine was an actual fuck you. My boss had just realized that he was getting terminated for some pretty egregious safety-related ignorance that I and several others had reported. He was going through that sob story period while HR was investigating and came in for his shift one day, and HR had terminated him, which he found out by trying to use our work portal and his login's not working. So while he's sob-storying me, which he didn't know that I'd reported him, I basically go, "So, is this your last day?" "Yeah, man, I'm terminated in the system." "Wow, that sucks for you. I just want to take this opportunity to tell you to go fuck yourself, and screw you for endangering our safety. You were, by far, the worst manager I have ever seen." And then I just walked away. Story 14. My mom was in the final stages of cancer, and I wanted to be around my parents as much as possible during that time. So I tried to ask for family medical leave, and the sheriff-in-chief basically said, "That's life," and declined the leave plan. I quit and found another job, and was able to have a good final 6 months with her before she passed. Story 15. Oh, I have a great one for this. 2.5 years ago, my company decided to dock my bonus by 50% because of the pandemic. I was the only one in a sales team of 40 that achieved his target. I didn't say a word to anyone. I just filled out an exit form on the HRM software and mentioned the reason as "company stole my money while the CEO bought a new car." Shortly after I submit that report, my manager calls me, being the asshole that he is, and after he was done his spiel, I very calmly said, "You're just their guard dog. I don't talk to dogs." So the CEO calls me and starts to tell me about how his personal life has nothing to do with my docked bonus. So I told him he can go ride that car into a canyon for all I care. An hour later, he calls me from another number since I wasn't picking up his calls. On the other end was a coworker in conference telling me how great the CEO was, how he gave him an advance on his payment when he needed it, and all sorts of wonderful things. This was followed by 2 minutes of me and my girlfriend laughing on the call and talking about how this was so pathetic. As if I'm a girl who has broken up with him and he called with his friend to tell me just how he's the best guy ever. It finally ended with the CEO speaking up and revealing that he was also on the call and could hear us. And my last words were, "Oh, that's great. I was worried you wouldn't realize what a bitch you were being." Never dealt with them again, started my own business, and I'm now making my monthly salary in about a week. And now we move on to the rapid fire segment for stories too short to make a full entry of, but too good to be left out. Let's hop right in. I lost him a big deal with another company by walking away at a critical moment. Took the taxi home after being wrongfully dismissed. tipped the taxi driver $250 on company expense. I walked into his office before my shift started and told him, "I quit," to which he said, "You're giving your 2 weeks notice?" I said, looking at my watch, "I'm giving my 10 minutes notice." My exit interview, when I was asked the reason for leaving, I simply said their name and nothing more. I taped a piece of fish to the back of his desk, which was up against a wall. I heard later that it wasn't until a month later that they found it. Screw that guy. I created a hiring firm to get all my former coworkers I cared about new jobs after a mass firing. Old boss threatened to sue me for poaching employees. What an egotistical clown. Sent them to the feds for Medicare fraud, and they got fined $41.7 million. They withheld $8,000 in pay and hired a lawyer to defend their actions. I hired a law student, and we beat them into submission. The milk I've been injecting into his chair with a hypodermic needle should be getting real rancid right about now. I hired my old boss as my junior in my new job, and treated him the same way he treated me. Petty, sure, but totally worth it. So that's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'm ReddList. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.